Ladies and gentlemen, hi. Welcome to the Will to Win podcast. I'm your host, Will Cook. And today's special guest is Dave Davies, and he's a really special person who has a lot of experience in coaching youth, coaching individuals, playing some serious basketball as well, and has a great teammate in his wife. He's been doing a basketball camp for 24 plus years. So there's a lot to say about this guy. But I'm gonna pass the ball to you and Dave, and welcome to my show and start us off. Get to give this great crowd a chance to get to know you.
Well, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Will. Like you said, I've had a lot of basketball experiences in my life. Basketball was always my number one love. Coming up from being a small boy, my dad was a high school basketball coach, and I was always in the gym since I was 3 years old. That was my second home. And so basketball has taken me to places I've never ever dreamed I would ever go. Has changed my life and put me in front of great people, great experiences, shown me my faith,
Yeah.
and drew me a lot closer to God through that and through the people that were my teammates and my coaches and all that.
Right.
So I'm super grateful for the journey that basketball has given me and just the relationship I have with God and my family and all that. But we've been running a basketball ministry for about 25 years now.
Okay.
It's camps, clinics, and leagues for kids 5 to 18 here in the Wilmington, North Carolina area. And God just keeps giving me opportunities to impact kids. Our biggest program here in Wilmington is our Winter League that has 2,600 kids playing in it,
Wow.
300 teams.
Mhm.
So we get to interact with all kinds of families and kids and coaches, train coaches on how to coach with the right perspective
Mhm.
and really give kids a great experience in basketball, especially in the younger ages. So
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Great start. So I think just before I hit record, Dave and I had a nice conversation about things revolving around faith, which seems like a big red thread through your life, in terms of connecting to something bigger and more significant. Tell us about the importance of faith throughout your experience, as a ball player and as a coach and as a father.
yeah, so obviously basketball was my number one priority. My dream was to play in the NBA, and so
Mhm.
I set about my whole life trying to work for that, and it kind of became my identity. Basketball did.
Okay.
And so, basketball, sometimes is there for you and sometimes it's not. Like you have good games, you have bad games. And the bad games really began to, make me ask some questions on, is basketball something that's always going to make me happy? Is it
Mm.
always going to bring me peace? And I was starting to realize that's not the case. And my identity began to kind of crumble in college when all of a sudden I was with 12 other all-stars in college.
Right.
And I had to fight for playing time for the first time in my life, and had to ride the bench for the first time in my life.
Right.
And so that's where I kind of began searching and began to try other things and materialistic things, relationships. Just nothing ever gave me any peace or happiness consistently. And that's in college, and that's where I ran into my relationship with Jesus. And that's the only thing that's ever given me any true peace and happiness. And when I accepted the Lord in my life, my priority lists started to change. Basketball kind of dropped down that list, even behind family, friends, relationships, and I think that's at that moment that's what's changed my trajectory of my life. In that I began to play a lot better and more freer. Began to be super grateful of just the opportunity to play the game, not putting too much pressure on myself. And that's when I think the Lord kind of opened up all kinds of opportunities and doors to me. And, my dream was NBA, but he just blew it out of the water with what he, allowed me to do, after I was cut from the NBA and what I'm doing now for 25 years. It's just way better plan than I could ever come up with.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's kind of where it kind of changed for me. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So everybody had, that. that eye in the sky, that goal of getting to
Yep.
the highest place in terms of individual accomplishments. But it sounds like the gift of service is really what you were meant to get involved in.
Yeah.
And and even if you had gone to the NBA, you actually could, impact even at a higher level because of that. But the reality is that it's like, God's delays are not God's denials. So like for example, it's like, well, am I going to get there? But the reality is you did get there because one of the things is it sounds like you hadn't really had adversity yet.
Right.
And sometimes the guy who's that much better then gets into a situation with adversity. They've
Mhm.
never been challenged.
Mhm.
And then you have to go in and find something. And
Yep.
you found uh the Lord.
Mhm.
And in that you found yourself.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
and so that, it would have been great probably to make it in the NBA, right? But you probably got a lot more than you even bargained for. You probably didn't even realize how this was going to open up your world,
Right. Right. Exactly.
which is beautiful.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't regret at all. Again, I was super discouraged when I was cut, and I thought it was the end of the world, but it was just the beginning.
Mm,
He had an entirely different plan for me, and I was allowed to go overseas and begin to, rub shoulders with people that were not only basketball players, but they were living out their calling that God had given in their life of using basketball as a platform to share the love of Christ with people. And that's where I began to learn what sports ministry was all about.
beautiful, beautiful
That's what I
question.
fell in love with that really kind of shot us into doing our own ministry. So.
Um, so what I wanted to ask you, you've worked with probably literally thousands of kids, correct, at this point?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. What would you say are the common traits that you see in athletes who truly maximize their potential? What's those common traits that you see in the ones that are like going to go to the next level?
Probably the biggest one is their work ethic. They understand the repetitions it takes and the work it takes to get to that level, the dedication. I
Mhm.
run into a lot of high school kids who, say they're putting in the work outside of practice and games, but I don't know that they fully understand the amount of sacrifice it takes
Hmm.
to get to that level and the amount of repetitions it takes to get to that sort of muscle memory.
Yes.
And so, that are they really willing to put down the video games? Are they really willing to, sacrifice their time with maybe a girlfriend to put
Hmm.
up reps? I mean, those are the types of people that end up, playing at really, really high levels because they just have such great muscle memory. Plus, genetics. Obviously, the genetics have a lot to do with it.
Of
Do you
course.
have the body? Do you have the height,
Right.
the athleticism to continue to keep moving up the levels? But you also see kids that don't have the athleticism but have the work ethic that
Hmm.
end up playing college ball because they just
Hmm.
work harder than everybody else.
Yeah, that was like Kobe Bryant in a way
Yep.
because Kobe Bryant didn't have the speed. Didn't have the hands like Jordan,
Yep.
those big hands.
Yep.
His vertical wasn't that great,
Yep.
but he just had that grit and that real obsessive attention to detail.
Yes.
And one of the things that, in terms of detail, and I'll switch sports for a second, but Tiger Woods, I think Nike had sent him 5 or 6 drivers to test out,
Mm,
and he reported back to Nike and he said, "I want the heavier one," and they're like, "They all weigh the same," and he goes, "No, they don't." He said, "I want the one that's a little heavier." So he sent them back to Nike
mm,
and they researched it further. And the guy who constructed or made the clubs had put an extra dab of glue in one of the drivers that was the weight was similar to a $2 bill, but Tiger was able to notice the weight difference, even
yeah.
though it was that much,
Yep.
because he had a psychotic attention
Mhm.
to detail.
Right.
And so there's that. And
Mhm.
then the reps. And a lot of people don't realize it's not the outcome,
Mhm.
it's trusting the process.
Yep.
Could you
Yep.
speak more to that?
Oh, absolutely. I was about to say that, another characteristic of great or elite players are that they get through adversity. They're not scared of hard things. They're not scared of times where you're in a valley and you've got to fight through an injury or fight through, just not being able to play,
Right.
or just not playing well. You look at Steph Curry and having to totally rebuild his jump shot, at the age of 13, 14 years old,
Hmm.
willing to go through that process to get to where you want to go. A lot of people quit at that point. Oh, it's not worth it. Or
Hmm.
their mental game is not where it needs to be able to get through that kind of stuff. And so, that attention to detail and that willingness to continue to fight through those valleys, I think really separates the kind of the rec player to the elite player for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that, and there's the day to day. What about resets? In other words, what I mean is, what would you say to somebody who's in the middle of the game? And this is a question I didn't give you previous, so you might have to challenge yourself a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And it's the perfect question. Um, what about if somebody gets into a spot in the game where they get into the uh-oh and they're 0 for 20 shooting? And what's a reset? What is it that somebody can do to kind of reset their psychology to get back on track when they get hit with the uncertainty and the oh no's?
Well, I think great players have short-term memories, right?
Okay.
So they are next play, next play, next play. Because
Yep.
a good shooter can't get caught up in the two shots that he missed, prior. He's got to keep shooting, right? And
Right.
knows, like Steph Curry's another example. Like he'll go 0 for 16, but he knows he's looking for that next streak, right? So
Hmm.
if I can just hit one, if I can hit, okay, I'm gonna go to the basket, I'm gonna get fouled, I'm gonna hit a free throw, right?
Right.
See the ball go in, all right, the next one's gonna happen. And he has a tendency to constantly find a streak within the game in order to go off 4 or 5, 6 shots in a row that'll get
Mm.
going, right? So great players, I think, are always looking for those little streaks that happen, right?
Hmm.
They're not caught up in what happened behind them. They don't have any rear view mirror. They're just constantly looking at the next play.
Right.
And that's what I try to teach my high school players is like next play. Like don't you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Next play, next play. Stay in the now, not in
In
the
the
past.
in the moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was talking to Steve Springer. He's a former Major League Baseball player. He was the hitting coach for the Toronto Blue Jays for 8 years.
Right.
And he was saying treat every day like it's opening day.
Hmm.
And it's almost like that reset of like 0-0. You know,
Yep.
if
Yep.
somebody's 0 for 20, they're going to start pressing and, trying to get all the hits back in one at bat,
Yep.
get down on themselves, treat everything as opening day. And also, you can celebrate the outs. Like if you hit the ball hard, you just got a little bit unlucky, but you actually won in that
Yep.
situation because you hit the ball on the screws, so to speak.
Yep. Yep.
So it's always just getting back in there. Also focusing on other impacts on different parts of the game. So if you're not shooting well, what else can you do?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right? Like so you can
Totally.
play hard on defense and help the team that way, and then maybe get your psychology back because you're feeling some rhythm about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a thing in basketball that has it's called a plus minus chart. And so we try to use it quite often where, a lot of people get caught up in just how many points they've scored. Well, if we use this plus minus chart where you get points for certain things. So like you might get 2 points for a steal, 3 points for an assist, 5 points for taking a charge, 2 points for an offensive rebound. And so we give all those plus points. The only way you can get minus points is committing fouls and turnovers.
Okay.
So now a kid can look and go, gosh, I had, 30 plus points, but I only scored 6 points because I had 5 boards and 4 steals or whatever. And so they can see the impact that they made in a game compared to the guy who just scored points, right?
Hmm.
And so you're totally right. Like you can impact the game in so many other different ways. And I think great players understand that. They're like, okay, my shot's not falling. Well, I'm gonna make it happen on another aspect of the game.
Mm.
So
I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction because it just came up in my gut. We were talking about, working with kids and lessons and talking about faith and different things like that. Um, there's a prominent athlete that's really struggling at this point. His name is Tiger Woods.
mm,
What would you say would be a good advice for someone like him who's going through something like them? And again, he was at the height. I mean, you talk about pinnacle of a sport. He was
yeah,
through the roof. But knowing what you know, 20, 4+ years with youth, having, having 4 children of your own, right? 4 kids,
Yep, four boys. Yep.
um, 4 boys, and being married and having faith and all these things together. What kind of advice would you give to somebody like that, who's kind of in a rough place in their life?
I would say to somebody like that to build a team. Like your teammates are what supports you and encourage you and keep you
Mhm.
accountable to the goals that you want to have in your life. Like if you try to go it all by yourself, I feel like the devil's going to pick you off,
Oh,
right?
wow.
That's
Okay.
that's basically the devil's plan is to try to get men to do things by themselves, right? If he can get you on an island, he's got you. But if you got a team of
Wow.
people that are keeping you accountable, that are encouraging you, that checking up on you, I know that in my life when I have friends
Hmm.
or brothers that check up on me once a
Right.
week, I feel like I am more living in the light than I am in the darkness, right? But with Tiger, it just seems like he keeps getting caught in these moments of darkness where there's nobody around.
That
And
is so important. And let me, it's really interesting. I read an article. I know my face is getting a little blurry, so we're gonna have to kind of ignore that. But um, maybe that's for a reason. Um, Tiger said, people say, well, why don't you just get a driver?
yeah,
And he doesn't want, reportedly, doesn't want a driver because he doesn't want the driver to, he wants his privacy. He doesn't want the driver to know what he's doing. So what's fascinating about that is, well, what are you doing then? You know what I mean? Like, what is it that you have to hide? So when you said that, I was like, wow, that's powerful because he wants to be on an island.
hmm
And addiction is a very self-absorbed, narrow thing that pulls you in. It's all about the addiction.
yeah,
And that's where faith, people tend to look at the bigger picture and a team. Daryl Strawberry made a plea to Tiger. It's like, Tiger, find Christ or find the Lord, find
yeah,
your higher power, or whatever, because he's going alone.
hmm
And that isolation, that is a level of self-absorption. Depression is a self-absorbed disorder.
hmm
And the rumination that people have over and over again is the reason they're depressed. They need to kind of break that.
hmm
Does
hmm
that make sense? In other words, break that rumination.
Oh, absolutely. Like you talked about AA. Why does those meetings, are so impactful for alcoholics, is because they have a team of people that are keeping them accountable. They have a list of rules that they got to go through. They have people they need to check in with, and they got to tell their story and be transparent before other people weekly in order to get through that addiction, right?
Right.
And those people are leaning towards other people rather than leaning towards that island that you talked about. And so, yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive because the world I think teaches you to try to take it on by yourself and use your own strength and be a strong person and all this stuff. But really, the stronger you get is when you're with other people. You get strength from other people,
Mm.
and you got to have a team around you to get through life. Like it's tough. I mean, I can't imagine what Tiger's going through, obviously, because he's at a whole different level of, public
Scrutiny.
notoriety.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's true for all of us. We need each other to get through this thing.
Hmm. Well, that leads me to the next thing, about, regarding you and your wonderful wife Leslie, and again, that's another team, right?
Oh yeah.
So how do you want, number one, balance everything along with a marriage as well, and that teammate there? How do you, you got teams all around you,
hmm
and you have all these demands, and then you have a shared vision. So how do you and your wife kind of balance this stuff out? Or how do you work through this?
Well, I gotta tell you, nobody really tells you how to do this. No one told us coming up how to handle these specific situations, with four boys and ministry and teams, like you said, all happening, midlife crisis. I'm 56 now, and what do you
Uh,
do during, midlife? What's your next 30 years gonna look like,
yeah.
I got two older boys that are now, getting married and moving out, and now our family's, smaller, and so there's a lot more. times of silence than there used to be. How do you
Hmm.
handle those situations? Like, how do you get to know your wife again when you've spent, over 20 years of parenting, those sort of things. So it's a bit of a, trial and error, like, but a
Hmm.
lot of it has to do with our support systems, just having people in our lives, not necessarily just Leslie and I, my wife, but having friends and having pastors and people who can pray for us and can check in on us, and we can go be transparent parent in front of people. And we're learning a lot from, older people, like, people that have gone through this,
Right.
had families, and we ask questions like, how did you do this? How did you handle your finances? How did you handle, empty nest stuff
Mm.
going on, all the stuff that we see coming. We try to get in front of and be intentional. We're not perfect at it by any means, and we've struggled. There's been some valleys in that, but the sweetest times and the most growth that we've experienced is because we've been intentional about interacting with others and
Hmm.
asking questions,
Okay.
So
So you make sure that you don't live on an island in a sense that if you do have a question about something, go to somebody who's really good at something that you want to ask the question about. If somebody's really great at a marriage, go ask them. If
yep,
somebody's great at basketball, if somebody's great at finances, go to them.
yep.
One of the conversations we had, or one of the items we talked about on the phone, the first time we spoke,
Mhm.
we talked about the challenges of coaching youth these days,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Um, what are some of the challenges and pitfalls, and how do we overcome those things as coaches and as parents?
Yeah, it's just, it's a different day, a different age and kind of mentality of kid than maybe you and I grew up.
Mhm.
We grew up in a little bit of tougher coaching environment where, coaches were allowed to be very critical and vocal, not always right in doing
Right,
that, but that's kind of how everybody was. Coach everybody the same exact way, right?
right, right.
Whereas now it seems like you have to coach the individual kid. And, some you can get on a little harder, some you can't.
Hmm.
And you've got to figure out the best way for that specific kid in order to, push them and challenge them in a way that they're going to grow. And so that's, I think, the biggest challenge for me as a coach is trying to figure those things out for each individual kid.
Mm.
Like I said, I can't just pick one way and do it one way for
Right,
everybody because it's not going to work.
right.
And so just being more positive and more coaching with perspective and vision, like, hey,
Hmm.
this is where we want to be. Don't get caught up in the negatives and the what's behind us. Let's keep moving forward. Hey, we want to be state champions, so we want to get into that state championship game. This is the things that we need to look for, and there's going to some things that we're going to have to go through in order to get there. And so constantly, pushing that kid to look forward and not getting caught up in the little mistakes that they make. Because,
Mm.
that's the other softness of this generation, I think, is they get mad at themselves or they're
Hmm.
too hard on themselves
Yeah.
for making mistakes because for whatever reason, whether their parents, maybe get on them because they make a mistake or whatever, they're embarrassed because they make a mistake. Well, no,
Hmm.
mistakes are part of it.
Hmm.
We're going to turn the ball over. We're going to foul. We're going to
Right,
make mistakes, and that's how we learn.
right.
And coaching with that perspective,
Well, it's important for the coach to know what's needed in a moment, when to
Mhm.
be hard, when to back off, when to be soft, when to be stoic,
Yep,
when to challenge somebody.
yep,
And I think Trent Mangiaro, who we both know,
yep.
had mentioned that his high school coach had pulled him out. He had made an error mid-inning.
Mm,
He had pulled him out mid-inning.
right.
And he talked about that as being a very difficult thing for him that
Yep,
made him afraid to make a mistake.
yes.
But it also drove him in the
Mm,
future. So
right.
it had a lasting impact on him in a good way, but it really had an effect on his self-esteem. And I believe it was his senior year. And he was able to kind of tell the coach about his success later on, which
Hmm.
was, hey, uh, now I got you. But
Right.
but one of my coaches when I played football and baseball, and Rob Girolamo, my coach, my sophomore year, we were 8-0.
Mm,
He knew when to be a gentle father,
hmm.
but he also knew when to lay in a little bit, but he
Mhm.
didn't do it in a way that was abusive or
Mhm.
mean.
Mhm.
He was being strong,
Mhm.
but he had a sense for the moment as to what was needed.
Right.
Do you have a player that you can think of in your career where you immediately you're just so proud of them because you saw a broken person or a person that didn't believe in themselves and then you saw this turnaround? Is there anybody that comes to mind?
Yeah, I had a player last year who was our point guard, and he was a senior, had transferred to our school just for his senior year, and his dad was really rough on him,
Mm,
and just performance driven, and said some really tough things, and I felt like he was one that I had to talk to in a really encouraging way most of the
okay.
time I talked to him. Because when I raised my voice, you could see he would check out or he would get emotional. And when he got emotional, he got very chaotic, very
Wow.
selfish, just caused him some trauma. You could see physically on his face.
Hmm.
And so I chose, I knew that's where I kind of made the adjustment and noticed, okay, I need to love this kid. I don't know that he's getting a lot of love at home. And so I'm going to love this kid in every moment that I can and speak to him softly, even when I'm critiquing him. Like, hey, man, you're doing great. Just make this little adjustment. You're fine. He would really get upset if he missed a couple shots. Like, keep shooting. No one here is telling you not to shoot. Keep shooting. You're doing great. And when I did that, it seems like he was able to play a lot more stable, and he was a natural leader, and so he began to lead well with his voice instead of
Yes.
getting mad at his teammates or mad at himself.
Hmm.
He was regulated, like
Yes.
emotionally regulated.
Emotionally regulated.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it seemed like he just began to blossom when he was in that mentality or that mental
Mhm.
state or emotional state. And so I was super, proud of him at the end of the year to be able to tell him like that was just amazing. Like I hope you really realize how awesome you played and how awesome of a teammate you were and how awesome of a leader you were when you were regulated and stable. And he was like, "Yeah, that was so much fun. I just felt like I was a much better version of myself. I was a better player, not necessarily scoring all those points, but just impacting the game in so many different ways." Right. But unfortunately, he's got to go home, right, to something entirely different. And I
Yes.
only had a year with him. So I was fearful that, he was going to slide back into this constantly dysregulated state,
Mhm.
and I could see that he's struggling a little more now that he's graduated. I still have a relationship with him and text him every once in a while, um, but I'm happy that he experienced that at least for a year. So
You gave him a paradigm shift, and you also gave him a reparenting in a way.
hmm
So for the
hmm
rest of his life, if he does get emotionally dysregulated, he can remember his senior year and
hope
go,
so.
wait, I was stable because of what I had around me
hmm
and also what was in me. So I
Yep.
became a leader too, and I saw how my emotional states impacted the team.
Right.
So
Right.
now he can use that. He might need reminders. He might get triggered. He's
Yep.
going to get triggered,
Oh yeah.
but it's
Yep.
going to be a decision. What do I do? Do I go back into an old pattern or do I
Mhm.
kind of like reinforce this new pattern that I learned? And he's
Right.
going to have to stay on top of it.
Right. Right. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
that was a great instincts on your part to kind of take him in, and you recognized that you maybe had to treat him a little bit differently for a time or two. I mean, Phil Jackson did that with Dennis Rodman. You know, Dennis would go in the locker room and ride a bike, and most people are like, "What are you crazy?" It's like, no, let him do it. He'll
Yeah.
show up in the game.
Yeah.
He'll show up exactly the way he'll go and get 20 rebounds.
Yeah.
But you have to let him do that. And I think Lawrence Taylor with the Giants, I think Bill Parcells did the same thing, whereas
Right.
that Lawrence would fall asleep during film,
Yeah.
but all of a sudden he would wake up and he would look at the scheme on the screen and be able to tell you exactly what was going on and what should happen.
Yeah.
So Phil knew that he would be ready and prepared when it's game time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if it was anybody else, it wouldn't have that wouldn't have flown well. But
Yeah.
because he was Lawrence Taylor and he played at the highest level, that was okay.
for sure.
But we have to see the nuances, but we
Hmm.
also have to see a cancer within the culture as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's something that has to be addressed. Have you ever had a situation where the culture got taken over by something that was negative and that you had to kind of step in and set a new guideline or parameter?
Yeah, I had a player that early on in my career that was a really, good player, but he was, in one of those situations where he had a horrible, horrible family situation. His grandparents were raising him, didn't have mom or dad in the picture, and the grandparents couldn't control him, and he just couldn't control himself in certain situations, and we had to put up, an actual contract with him because he had missed a bunch of classes and
Oh,
had a baby in high school, and just disaster. And he just couldn't get it under control enough to stay on the team, and so we had to make a final contract with him and say, hey, here's what we're asking you to do. Here's things that you need to do, and here's things we're going to do, and if you don't do these, then you can't play basketball. You just can't do it anymore. And he ended up signing the contract. I signed the contract, and he ended up not being able to fulfill what the contract said, and I had to kick him off the team. And he was mad at me, but I was able to love him through that and just say, "Hey, man, I put my name on this too. Like I wrote my name down, believing that in you, and I've always believed in you." And I put myself out there. And for me not to follow through with this contract that I signed is saying something about me. It says I don't do what I tell you I'm going to do.
right.
And I want to be truthful with you always and be upfront. But you knew going into this thing what was going to happen, and here we are. And so obviously that was a disappointing moment for me and him. But later on in life, he came back to me and he was thankful for that because, of the line drawn in the sand, and it gave him a boundary to understand that, I've got to, take ownership of my life, and I've got to follow through with things, and if I'm going to be successful. And so that was hard, very hard for our team. He would have really helped our team, but at the same time, it was a bit of a cancer situation, and yeah, I think we were better because of it because he
Hmm.
just couldn't get it under
Hmm.
control. So,
And I think he got his lesson,
mhm,
and it might not have come at that moment.
right.
In other words, the listen, you got pain and pleasure, right? You had the carrot and the stick
Yep.
as leverage.
Yep.
People learn a lot more from the stick than they do the carrot. And when
That's
something really bad happens, they might hate you at the moment, but that can create incredible leverage if used properly for later on,
right.
where they come back and say thank you because they realized that the pain was so painful
Right.
that it had to transform them, and if they could no longer ignore it. If you
Right.
ask any if you ask Tom Brady or anybody like that, they remember those Super Bowl losses more than they remember the
Hmm.
wins.
Hmm.
And that stuff sticks with them.
Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you could either fall and not rise,
Hmm.
or you can go, wait a minute, I'm hungry again. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to use this?
Right.
So how does basketball apply to life? Like, in other words, what are all the things that people learn in hoops that they can transform into their lives and provide lessons for them, like and for others?
Yeah, I mean, I think sports is one of the only places you could practice this, right? Practice adversity and
Mm,
how we respond it. Like where in
awesome.
life can you do that
Yeah,
and be in a safe situation where you're not going to get thrown in jail or get killed or anything like that. You can practice little adversities,
I
right? And
love that.
it's
Yeah.
going back to the next play, right?
Yes.
So if something bad happens and it doesn't happen the way I want it to happen, how do you respond? Well, next play. Let's try again. Try again. Try again. And I think that's what I draw from all the time in my life. I come into an obstacle.
Right.
I have been trained my whole life to figure out a way to get around it,
Right.
right? So if I come up to a good defender, like, how do I get around that guy?
Hmm.
Right? He's taller or he's faster
Hmm.
than me, or
Hmm.
all right, let's make some adjustments and work it out. And so I don't ever fear any situation that I come up against because I know that I've been through 1,000 little ones in my life that have worked and
Hmm.
haven't worked, and I've learned so much from that.
Right.
And so, like I said in the beginning, basketball's taken me to places I've never dreamed of, taken me to foreign countries to live on my own where I can't speak the language and I got to figure out how to get a dinner on a Friday night, jump in a taxi and try to figure out where I need to go to get to a place to get something to eat. That's pretty hard to do. So anything else in my life seems to be a lot less hard because I've been through those little
Right.
moments,
And you chose the hard because I
Yeah.
say that people, life is hard, choose your hard. So if you train
Yep.
really hard,
Yep.
you'll be ready for the tough things in life because you've already
Yep.
know what hard feels like.
Yeah.
But what you said about you practice adversity, that's one of the most profound things I've ever heard. That is so amazing. It's a laboratory for learning. It's like this is the tough stuff. If you can, in this microcosm, in this small moment, and you can take your emotions and bind them and
Yep.
instead of them running you, and you
Yep.
can shape them, and then you get through it. There's an inner pride that develops from that.
Yep.
And it's really amazing. And then it can be transferable.
Well, yeah, an inner confidence. Like I
Yes.
can walk into any situation in any room confident knowing that I can handle whatever is about to be thrown at me because
Yes.
I've practiced it thousands of times, right?
Wow.
I feel like that's confident word is like I used to be not very confident when I was young, but I feel so confident now that that's allowed my sons to see that confidence. I could start seeing them going through life situations as adults now and not fearful of how to get through something, right? They're not just
Mm.
going to crumble, they're going to figure out a way to get around it. And
Right.
I think
And
they've
and they're
seen,
gonna automatically go there.
yes,
So in other words, like
first response.
it's
Yeah.
like a lot of times people go, "Oh no, what if?" instead of what's great about this that I haven't noticed yet.
Hmm.
So right away they could go, oh, an adversary, or wow, I haven't gotten taken off kilter in a while. How can I use this? It's reframing the moment and seeing the victory in the learning because
Yeah.
you learn more in the loss than you do from any win that you'll ever have.
Right.
And
Right.
that's where the magic is. So let me ask you a question. So let's get to the promotional part. Let's get to Halo Hoops and stuff like that. How can we drive business your way? How can you let us know about how to contact and where to go in terms of your website and stuff?
Well, it's just halohoops.org. Again, we run camps, clinics, and leagues for kids 5 to 18. So, here in this area, um, so all of our programs are listed there. We're currently under a capital campaign to try to raise money for a 4 to 6 court facility here in Wilmington, much needed. That's our biggest obstacle when it comes to, doing our programs is finding facilities that we can use gym space. It's just very limited in this town. And we're at the mercy of, those people that have gyms because they have their own schedules and those sort of things. So we've always dreamed of having our own facility, but we just rent by the hour,
Okay.
schools, churches, community centers to carry out our programs. And so, when it comes to, prayer and good thoughts about that capital campaign, hopefully, that'll happen in the next couple of years and we can, finally have our own home base. So looking
Well,
forward to that time.
and is that the ultimate? Is that
Yep.
the ultimate?
Yeah,
So
because we're experience driven. We want to create our mission is to create life-changing youth basketball experiences. And so that means that, we not only, teach kids how to play the game the right way, but we're also going to share some values and some character and some faith with you that's going to help you with the mental and spiritual game, emotional game. And so having our own facility, we can control the experience, right? We can put scripture on the wall. We can,
yeah,
have some stories,
yeah,
in
yeah.
the hallways. We can
Mhm.
have some positive music playing and those sort of things that are going to help kids just have an amazing experience and feel loved by not only the coaches that they interact with, but also feel loved by God. And so we would love an opportunity to do that at our own facility. So that's the dream. So
Well, I one day I can't wait to hear when that happens, and
yeah,
it's going to happen. And
appreciate it.
and that'll be really cool to see that and witness that. And listen, I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I love what you brought. You were very present, and I think as men, we need to be present and to show men that presence is it.
Absolutely.
And I love what you're doing. And thank you for being here. And folks, hi, I'm Will Cook, and I'm going to sign off from the Will to Win. Thank you for joining us today. Dave, thank you for being my guest.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it.
Yep.